Beggars have no place at a wedding. That's what he said on my porch on Sunday, June 29th, 2025, at 7:42 p.m., thinking the doorbell camera was just an ornament like the ferns I can't keep alive. He chuckled to his groomsmen about my thrift store suits, and I stood 10 feet inside, holding my breath like a man trying not to frighten a bird off a windowsill. The word beggar landed where my wife's laughter used to live. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. Sometimes the quietest fathers have the loudest ledgers. I'm Mark Ellison, 61, Charleston born. Retired project manager, widower. I measure my days in receipts and repair manuals. I'm not old money. I'm careful money. A $1,400 venue deposit I placed on May 2nd with Magnolia Wharf. A $9,200 catering estimate for shrimp and grits because Lily loves the way the stoneware warms in her hands. And a $3,800 dress purchase on my Amex because some promises deserve to be felt, not argued. I replayed the clip twice, the way you poke a bruise to confirm it still hurts, then dragged the progress bar back to the exact second his mouth formed the B in beggar. The audio was clear, humid with July coming. He didn't know the Bell record sound. Ethan Vale, my daughter's fiancé, fintech founder, which around here can mean anything from genius to a man with a co-working desk and a ring light. I wanted to think it was a bad joke. I wanted to think the laughter was for someone else. But the groomsman asked, "You sure you can squeeze him?" And Ethan said, "Please, he'll pay." He's desperate to be included. The word desperate did something beggar didn't. It made my hands go cold. I set my phone on the kitchen counter beside the printed venue invoice. Cream paper. Black ink, May 2nd, 2025. My signature looping too carefully, like I could draw a steady future. Next to it, the catering estimate with a penciled note from Harold, the manager, father of the bride, discount applied. And the dress receipt. Elena would have loved that dress. She used to hold fabric to her cheek and say, "It should feel like yes." I touched the paper and felt the plastic beneath. An old cutting board worn smooth by thousands of small meals. I texted Lily, "We need to talk tomorrow." Just us. The typing dots flashed, disappeared, returned. She sent a heart and a single period, a tiny punctuation mark that looked like a worry. The house was too quiet. So I walked to the garage and pulled the cover off the 1965 Rolls-Royce Silver Cloud 3. Elena's father gave it to us the year Lily was born. I've kept it idling healthy for decades, oil changes logged in neat handwriting, belts and hoses dated and initialed. Chrome winked like a kept secret. People think a Rolls is a crow about wealth. To me, it's a chapel bell, built to be rung only when it matters. I sat in the driver's seat and watched the reflection of my own tired face bend across the curved glass. The interior smelled like leather and lemon oil, and the last year of my wife's life, when she rode shotgun to chemo and insisted we stop for okra soup on the way home. If I closed my eyes, I could hear her say, "Good wood doesn't brag, Mark. It carries the house. The insult didn't break me. It arranged me." It took the stack of papers on the counter, the title tucked in a manila folder, the trust letter in my attorney's draft box, and it put them in a straight line. Between the word beggar and that engine, a plan began to idle, quiet, smooth, inevitable. Tomorrow, I would see Lily. Tomorrow, I would lift this out of embarrassment and into clarity. Tonight, I pressed my palm to the wheel and promised Elena I'd drive our girl toward yes. Insults are cheap until they cost your daughter her future. Monday morning, June 30th, 8:10 a.m. Lily arrived with 2 coffees and the kind of smile you use like a bandage. She stood just inside the kitchen, damp from the Charleston humidity, hair pinned up with one of those brass clips her mother used to lose between couch cushions. "Dad," she said, and that single word carried a lifetime of "please don't make this hard." I didn't speak. I set my phone on the counter like a third cup, opened the doorbell app and pressed play. We listened to Ethan's voice leak through our own front door. Beggars have no place at a wedding. The word beggar hit a second time, and I watched it land in my daughter's eyes. She flinched so slightly you might mistake it for a blink. Then she nodded once and said, "Okay." No defense. No quick laundry list of his virtues. Just okay, the sound a bridge makes before it decides whether to hold. I kept it clinical to save us both. I slid the $1,400 Magnolia Wharf invoice across the counter, May 2nd, 2025. My name, their letterhead. I placed the $9,200 catering estimate beside it with Harold's penciled note. Father of the bride consideration applied. Then the $3,800 bridal receipt with the last four of my Amex scratched at the bottom from the cashier's pen. My ledger, my language. These are the things I have said yes to, I told her. I need to make sure the person you're marrying knows what yes costs. She stared at the papers as if they were a map and she couldn't locate north. He didn't mean it about you, she tried. He's been stressed. The venue's been asking for flexibility. I asked what flexibility meant. She rolled the word around, searching for flavor. He said, if we put a little more down, we could swap the string quartet for a DJ he knows. It would make the reception modern, and they might help us on the back end. Help you, I repeated, and felt the smallest thread in my chest tug. I walked to the printer in my study and returned with an email Harold had forwarded to me on Friday. Subject, entertainment options. In it, Ethan had asked for a referral fee consideration if the venue onboarded his DJ. Harold's response was brisk as a dock foreman. We do not pay referral fees. I tapped the sentence. This is what he means by flexible. Lily sat, the coffee untouched, both hands flat on the table, the way her mother would when a conversation started to tilt. Dad, I don't want to fight before my wedding. Her voice was small and honest, and it knocked something loose in me. For a heartbeat, I was back in the oncology ward, counting ceiling tiles, while Elena pretended the fluorescent lights didn't make everyone look like unripe pears. The day we sold her ring to cover the last bill, she'd said, "It's just a thing, Mark. We're the treasure." The memory carried weight and mercy. This morning it sat on my ribs. Neither do I said. So let's not fight. Let's decide. I opened a folder and showed her the draft trust letter from Mr. Klein, my estate attorney, waiting on my final note. It was simple, $250,000 in a family trust, set to disburse after the wedding for a down payment or a business start, contingent upon a signed prenup and a disclosure that neither spouse had outstanding undisclosed debts or judgments. This isn't a test, I told her. It's a boundary. For you. She didn't reach for the letter. She watched me instead. A prenup, she said carefully, as if tasting a foreign spice. Ethan says prenups are anti-romance. I shrugged. Seatbelts don't ruin car rides. Silence settled between us. The kettle clicked itself to ready and then whistled, a thin, weary sound like a distant train. I poured water over a tea bag because when you can't fix the big thing, you fix your hands. Lily traced the edge of the Magnolia Wharf invoice. He's been asking me to talk to you, she admitted, voice small, to get you to add a little more deposit so the venue knows we're serious. Just to keep options open. Options for who? I asked. She didn't answer. We took our cups to the porch. The marsh behind the house smelled like pluff mud and forgiveness. Egrets stitched the air between reeds, their wings unbothered by our human math. If Ethan is who you believe he is, I said, a prenup protects you both. If he isn't, it protects you. Either way, we do this with paper. She nodded, eyes wet but stubborn. Okay, I'll tell him. Today. After she left, I walked the narrow path behind the house until sweat slicked my back and my breath found the steady climb of the cicadas. Pride is a poor pilot, grief is worse, but duty can steer. I dried my face with my shirt hem and went inside to my desk, where everything I am becomes ink. At 10:26 a.m., I called Mr. Klein. Finalize the trust letter, I said, and draft the prenup for review. Include the clause we discussed, that neither spouse can claim prior family assets, including the 1965 Rolls-Royce Silver Cloud and the trust principal. He asked for a date. We need acknowledgement of receipt by July 3rd noon, I said. I could hear him smile into professionalism. We'll set the meeting for July 3rd, 10:30 a.m., my office. Bring your ledger. Paper lawyering makes me breathe easier, nouns and numbers, not vibes. At 11:45 a.m., my phone buzzed. Harold again. He'd received a call from Deirdre, Ethan's mother, pressing for a friends and family rate in exchange for visibility with Deirdre's network. Harold's email reply was a miniature sermon. We treat every bride as family. We don't trade integrity for mentions. I printed that and slid it behind a new tab in my binder. Vendor interference. The binder got heavier, like a very polite weapon. Noon came and went. The house ticked in the heat. I made a ham sandwich I didn't want and ate it because old men forget to eat when they're angry. At 1:12 p.m., Lily texted, told him about prenup. He said, we'll talk. He asked if you'd loosen the trust conditions. I stared at the ask and thought of Eleanor's ring. I typed back, conditions stay. Love can adjust, math can't. By 3:12 p.m., I had written and rewritten the same email to Miguel Alvarez, a private investigator, a friend in my Veterans Breakfast Club, swore by. I kept it short because good requests are scalpel thin. Miguel, need a fast, quiet look at Ethan Vale. Debts, lawsuits, LLCs, evictions, anything. 3-day window. Discretion matters. I attached Ethan's full name, birth date, pulled from the engagement announcement, and the 2 company names he'd bragged about at Sunday brunch. I added one line at the bottom that looked like a plea and read like a memo. My daughter is marrying a man I don't know yet. Help me know him. When I hit send, my hands shook, not from fear exactly, but from the sudden relief of doing something adult and exact. I walked to the garage and opened the door just to smell the lemon oil again. The roll sat quiet under its cover, patient as a verdict. I touched the car title through the manila folder, felt the crisp of the paper, and decided I'd bring it to Klein's office when we met. Not a flourish, evidence, a boundary you can hold in your hands. Evening deepened. The neighborhood sprinkler systems hiccuped to life. I stood in the kitchen, where we used to make Elena's lemon bars. Her recipe card still taped inside the pantry door, grease-speckled at the corner, and realized the ache in my chest had changed shape. It wasn't the tight fist of fury anymore. It was something steadier. Resolve is just grief that decided where to go. At 7:06 p.m., Lily texted again. He's upset. Says prenups are for people who plan to fail. Says you're controlling the money. I told him the trust is for stability, not leverage. He said he feels managed. I stood at the sink and let the cold water run over my wrists until the sting chased the heat out. Then I wrote back, ask him to join us at Klein and Fairchild, 214 Meeting Street, July 3rd at 10:30 a.m. We'll all breathe the same air and sign the same paper. 3 dots. Nothing. 3 dots. Okay. I shut off the light over the sink and went to the mantel. Elena's photo, her head tilted like she had just heard the world say something foolish, watched me. If you've got a better map, I said aloud, show me. The house didn't answer, but the quiet felt less like an empty room and more like a held breath before a clean dive. Tomorrow would be for plans. Tonight, I stacked the invoices, slid them back into the binder, and set the doorbell audio to auto-upload to Klein's secure cloud folder. Then I slept the way an old dog sleeps in a thunderstorm, one ear open, ready to move when the rain breaks. A good plan starts with a single, undeniable number. Mine arrived on June 30th at 6:40 p.m. in a PDF that hummed like a wasp in my inbox. Miguel works fast. Clean reputation, veteran like me, steady hands on truth. His email read, first pass attached. More coming. Inside, a $28,000 Vegas marker from last winter. A $7,412 credit card charge-off. 2 LLCs, Vale Dynamics and Blue Spire Consulting, registered not to some polished downtown suite, but a co-working building off King Street. The same place Ethan shot his engagement announcement video. Oh, glass and rented confidence. I stared at the numbers the way a surgeon studies a scan, clinically but not cold. I pulled out my ledger, flipped to the wedding tab, and saw the dates lined up like a confession. Ethan had first pressed for more venue flexibility the same week the credit line fell apart. Not coincidence. Pressure disguised as planning. A man who sees your pocket as his oxygen tank will always find new ways to breathe. I took a breath that tasted like salt and memory. Elena used to tell me there's a difference between being humble and being hidden. Don't hide from people who mistake your quiet for lack. I'd been quiet long enough. I called Klein. Add Section 7 to the prenup, I told him. No marital claim to prior family assets, including the rolls and the trust principle. Klein didn't even pause. And the clause about misrepresentation voiding gifts? He asked. Yes, I said. Keep it clear. He chuckled softly like a man tightening a bolt he knew would hold. You're not making war, he said. You're building a fence. Fences keep things in or keep things out, I said. We'll see which side he stands on. Tuesday morning, July 1st, the air already thick enough to spread on toast, I walked to the keypad by my front gate and changed the code. 4 to 5, 1 to 7, the month and day Lily was born. Elena chose it originally. I pressed enter, listened to the soft click of a boundary resetting and whispered, not locking him out. Locking us in. Then I drove to Nora's apartment downtown and handed her the spare key to my guest suite. She opened the door in scrubs, night shift at the assisted living facility, and blinked the sleep out of her eyes. What's this? A backup, I said. If things get loud, she didn't laugh. She didn't ask for context. She simply placed the key in a ceramic dish shaped like a pelican and said, about time. That's the thing about sisters. They hear the storm 3 miles before you feel the wind. By noon, Harold called. He sounded irritated, not with me, but with the world. Ethan's mother called again, he said. Wanted a network rate. Told me the venue should be honored to be part of their brand. Did you record anything? I asked. I don't record, he said. I archive. A soft clack on his keyboard echoed down the line. An email he forwarded me as he spoke. Subject, collaboration opportunity. It read like a ransom note dressed in pearls. Influence exchange, visibility, preferred vendor position. I printed it and slid it under a new tab. Vendor interference. The binder was getting heavy. Evidence has mass because truth does. At 3:40 p.m., Lily came by again. Hair pulled back, face pale in the summer light. He says the prenup insults him, she said, not sitting down. Says you don't trust him. I don't know him yet, I replied gently. Trust isn't inherited at the wedding. It's earned before it. She pressed her lips together, fighting tears. I love him, Dad. I know, I said. I loved your mother enough to sell a ring and sleep in plastic chairs beside beeping machines. Love doesn't remove caution. She sank into the old kitchen chair Elena refinished years ago, tracing the carved grain. He said you're trying to control the money. I'm trying to protect you from someone who thinks my bank account has his name on it. Lily exhaled, long and low. He'll sign, she said, as if saying it made it true. He just needs time. Time is generous, I said. Truth is necessary. That evening, the house was quiet, except for ceiling fans ticking like patient clocks. I went to the garage, lifted the rolls cover again, and polished the spirit of ecstasy until my reflection steadied. The car wasn't revenge. It was legacy. The last thing Elena's father gave before cancer took him. The last thing Elena rode in before chemo took her hair. A family doesn't play poker with its heirlooms just because someone likes shiny things, I whispered to the chrome, not expecting an answer. Let's see who shows up when the paper's on the table, and in that dim, oil-scented garage, the plan didn't just idle, it shifted into gear. If they worship appearances, let the truth dress well. July 2nd, 9:15 a.m. Charleston already sweating like a guilty man in church. I pulled the Rolls-Royce Silver Cloud 3 out of the garage and eased it onto Meeting Street. Not to show off, to remind myself why this mattered. Legacy isn't loud. It's polished, maintained, and earned every year you don't sell it. The car purred like old money that didn't need to explain itself. Leather soft as confession, wood trim glowing like honey in sunlight. People stared, not because it was flashy, but because it's the kind of machine that whispers something real is passing by. I parked outside Klein and Fairchild. Classic brass plaque. The kind of law office that smells like paper and principle. Inside, Klein greeted me with a nod and slid a cream stock envelope across his desk, the official notice of conditional gifts. 1 clean sheet, 3 columns. Venue deposit, 14,500 laus paid May. Second catering estimate, 9,200 string quartet deposit, 1,200 dress, $3,800 on my Amex Family Trust, 250,000 contingent on prenup plus full financial honesty at the bottom. Klein's quiet nail, material misrepresentation voids all commitments, no fireworks. Just law in its Sunday best. He folded 2 more copies, sealed them, and handed them to a courier. 1 for Ethan, 1 for Deirdre. I thanked him and stepped out into the heat, binder under my arm, feeling like a man settling lumber before building a house. At 11:40 a.m., my phone buzzed. Miguel again. A screenshot first. A $2,400 consulting invoice from Blue Spire to the DJ Ethan wanted to bring in. Same date as my quartet booking deposit. Then Miguel's text, kickback scheme. Sloppy one, I almost laughed. Not at the scheme, at the arrogance. People who confuse charm for integrity always assume no one is watching the receipts. I forwarded the screenshot to Harold. He replied in under a minute with the original email, where he'd rejected the DJ deal. I printed it and slid it behind the vendor interference tab. That binder was starting to feel like a gospel. At 1:05 p.m., I wrote Ethan an email so polite it could have been served on silver. Attached is the finalized prenup. Please review ahead of our meeting at 10:30 a.m. on July 3rd at Klein and Fairchild. Section 7 highlighted as discussed. He replied 5 minutes later with a fist bump emoji and, "We'll breeze it, Pops." I printed that too. A man tells you who he is in the tiny moments. The rest of the afternoon, I walked the pier near Sullivan's Island, counting shrimp boats and timing the tide. It's strange how planning revenge feels a lot like preparing a meal. You lay out ingredients, sharpen knives, keep the counter clean, and you don't rush the heat. Back home, I called Nora. "Sit beside Lily tomorrow at the rehearsal dinner," I said. "If things blow, she'll need someone steady." Nora didn't ask why. She just said, "I'll wear flats so I can stand fast. That's family." I opened the binder and placed the car title to the rolls inside. Right beside a glossy photo from 1999, Elena in sunglasses, Lily in pigtails, both laughing in the back seat. I whispered to the picture, "Tomorrow is for proving, not punishing." Outside, storm clouds gathered over the marsh, dark and swollen, holding their breath. I knew how they felt. Night fell. The house creaked softly, like an old friend shifting in its chair. I laid out my clothes for the next day, not fancy, just honest, pressed blue shirt, clean khakis. The watch Eleanor gave me when I retired. I placed the binder by the front door. Weighty as a promise. Revenge isn't anger. Revenge is accounting. And tomorrow, the ledger would open. Deadlines make cowards loud. July 3rd, 9:50 a.m. I was already seated in Klein's conference room. Binder open, coffee cooling, when Ethan burst in 20 minutes late. Cologne thick enough to register as a personality trait. His sunflower pocket square screaming "Notice me" louder than his shoes clicked across the tile. "Traffic," he announced. Though Klein and I both knew Charleston traffic at 9:50 wasn't a 20-minute excuse. He dropped into the leather chair like he owned the oxygen in the room and grinned wide. "All right, what are we signing?" Klein slid the prenup across the table. "Review at your pace. We'll notarize once you're ready." Ethan skimmed 3 paragraphs, then stopped at section 7. His face didn't fall, and it hardened. Like wet plaster drying into shape. "No marital claim to prior family assets," he read aloud. "Including the rolls?" "Yes," I said. "And the trust. They stay separate." He leaned back, smile tightening. "Mark, come on. Lily and I are building a future. That car's just sentimental." "It is," I said. "And that sentiment is not negotiable." He tapped the page. "I'm the investment here. I don't do paperwork before trust exists." Klein slid the notarization stamp forward. "Paperwork creates trust, Mr. Vale. Paperwork does you." Ethan laughed, but it sounded like cut glass scraping a counter. "I'll sign, but give me 24 hours. I need to digest this." 2 hours, I replied. That was the agreement. He stiffened. Feels like you're trying to control the money. I'm trying to protect the marriage. If there's nothing to hide, there's nothing to fear. He shoved the pen away and stood. I'll sign acknowledgement of receipt. But I'm not signing this today. He scrawled a sloppy signature on the acknowledgement line, shook his head like someone refusing a dessert they secretly wanted, and stormed out. His cologne lingered, ambition and insecurity bottled together. 20 p.m., back at my kitchen table. Lily sat there crying into a folded paper towel. He said you're suffocating him. That money shouldn't need walls. I brewed tea, slow and steady, because boiling water gives the hands dignity when the heart is shaking. I slid Miguel's page across the table, the $28,000 Vegas marker. Lily read it once, then again, her breath catching like a child waking from a bad dream. "Why didn't he just tell me?" she whispered. "People who lie about money," I said gently, "lie because they worship perceived wealth more than earned stability." She didn't defend him this time. She didn't speak at all. She just stared at the counter, where the 3,800 dress receipt still sat. Curled at the edges at 3:35 p.m., another email from Miguel, a forwarded thread from Deirdre, the mother-in-law-to-be who thought manners were for the help. She'd written to a bridal vendor, visibility guarantee for reduced rates. We curate high-profile spaces, CC'd Ethan. The vendor's reply was curt enough to cut glass. Miguel added a short note. Not their first time doing this. I printed everything, slid it under vendor interference, and clicked the binder shut. That sound, the clean click, felt like a judge saying next case. Dusk rolled in thick thunder murmuring somewhere above Sullivan's Island. Rain began its slow drumming on the porch roof. Not hard, not fast, just testing the world like a toe in cold water. I walked outside, the air electric, and pulled the rolls forward to the edge of the driveway. Full tank, binder in the passenger seat, title in the glove box. I texted Harold, tomorrow. 6:20 p.m., quartet after toasts. He replied with a thumbs up and a little anchor emoji. I stared at that anchor, understood it, appreciated it, because tomorrow wasn't just a rehearsal dinner. It was the first crack in a false crown. Tomorrow, truth would sit at the table and courtesy would stand beside it. Holding the door shut until the storm finished speaking, I turned off the porch light, listened to the rain, hit the magnolia leaves, and whispered to the car. We're almost there. The Rolls didn't answer. Rolls Royces don't brag. They arrived. July 4th was supposed to be fireworks. I brought a mirror July 4th, 6 p.m. Magnolia Wharf shimmered in red, white, blue bunting. Mason jars glowing like little fireflies under string lights. Shrimp boats bobbing against a watercolor sky. The air smelled of sea salt and bourbon-glazed ribs. It should have felt like joy. Instead, it felt like a courtroom with catering. Lily looked beautiful but tired, wearing a soft cream dress and worry in her eyes. My sister Nora held her hand for a moment before we walked in. "Breathe," Nora whispered. Lily nodded once, a soldier stepping into formation. Deirdre floated over first, pearls strangling her neck like guilt pretending to be grace. She didn't greet me. She air-kissed the air 2 inches from my cheek. "Mark," she sang, "so glad you could make it." The venue really elevated itself tonight. "The venue's always been elegant," I replied. "It's the guest list that changes the temperature." She blinked once, twice, moved on. Then Ethan approached, chest bump hug ready, smile so rehearsed it squeaked. "My man," he barked. He leaned close, whispering, "Tonight we keep it smooth, yeah? No weird money lectures in front of family?" I didn't answer. You don't negotiate with someone who practices charm the way others practice bowling. We took our seats. Lily beside me, fingers tapping lightly against the linen. Nora across, steady as granite. The tide whispered under the deck, waiting. At 6:18 p.m., glasses clinked. Harold tapped a spoon against his water goblet, and to my quiet surprise, Ethan stood first. He raised his glass. "To Lily," he beamed, "and to families who rise together." Cameras lifted like gulls. Deirdre dabbed at imaginary tears. Ethan gestured toward the water, claiming horizon and tide like they came in his wedding registry. People laughed politely. He talked about building a legacy brand of love. He mentioned modern values. shared ventures, network expansion. Not a word about Lily's heart, but plenty about what their marriage could produce. When he finished, applause fluttered. He sat, I stood. Slowly, I nodded to Harold. He nodded back, and the string quartet, the one Ethan tried to replace for kickback money, began to play Summertime. Soft, warm, haunting. Elena loved that song. It sounded like truth in a silk dress. I stepped to the mic, binder in hand, and placed a small velvet pouch on the table beside me. "I'm Mark," I said. "Lily's father. And I pay attention." A ripple. Glasses lowered. The room tightened. I want to share what love looks like from where I stand. My voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. I opened the binder and read numbers like they were scripture. $4,500 deposit on May 2nd, Magnolia Wharf. $9,200 catering estimate. $3,800 dress on my Amex. And a $250,000 trust that releases after marriage. Contingent. On honesty and mutual respect, I let the numbers float like fireworks pausing before they burst. Then, I opened the velvet pouch and placed 2 keys on the table. They gleamed like consequences. Gate code changed Tuesday. Spare apartment key moved. Family assets secured. A murmur tore through the room like a small wind. Deirdre stiffened, lips pinched so tight they nearly disappeared, and then I pressed play on my phone. Just one line, caught by my doorbell 2 nights prior. "Beggars have no place at a wedding." Gasps. Silence sharp enough to cut shrimp shells. Lily's hand flew to her mouth. I felt her breath catch beside me. I turned to Ethan. "You said it." Outside my door. "About me." His face crumpled into indignation, rage, and fear. The unholy trinity of men who grew up thinking manipulation was a personality. "Mark, come on." I was joking. Locker room banter. I lifted the Rolls-Royce title. Crisp, pristine, legacy on cardstock. "This," I said softly, "was Eleanor's father's final gift. It arrives tomorrow, only if the prenup is signed tonight." Deirdre sputtered. "You can't. This is coercion." I held up a hand. "No, this is clarity. Romance without responsibility is just appetite." I looked at Ethan. "Section 7 isn't about keeping you out. It's about keeping my late wife in." A pause. Thunder in the distance. And then the screen behind us lit up. Blue Spire Consulting invoice. $2,400. Brand integration. Same day as quartet deposit. Courtesy of Harold. Quiet hero of the evening. Fireworks outside cracked the sky, but inside we had a better show. Faces drained. Phones lowered. One bridesmaid whispered, "Oh my God." Ethan's jaw worked like a man chewing panic. This is an ambush," I nodded. "No, an audit." And then I stepped aside so the silence could finish speaking. The quartet played on. Summertime, floating like forgiveness or warning. No one was sure which. I returned to my seat next to Lily. She didn't speak. She just reached for my hand and held it like a lifeline. Nora placed her palm on Lily's back. Steady, grounding, immovable. Ethan stood frozen, glasses flashing, sweat gathering at his temples. He opened his mouth once, twice, then turned away from the mic. Pride deflated, narrative collapsed. He tried to compose himself. He tried to smile. He failed. Outside, real fireworks burst, red, white, gold. But every head in that room was turned toward the only thing that truly exploded that night: entitlement. And tomorrow, the wreckage would start talking. Tonight, however, justice simply pulled up a chair and waited. When appearances crack, the echo is expensive. For a moment after the doorbell recording stopped, nobody breathed. The only sound was the soft, aching glide of the quartet finishing the last bars of Summertime. It was elegant, haunting and merciless, the way truth often is. Then sound rushed back into the world like floodwater. Gasps, forks scraping plates, shoes shifting. One bridesmaid started crying quietly. Someone's steak knife clinked against the china. And Deirdre, pearls trembling like they knew they were about to get pawned, hissed the word like a stage curse. Defamation. I didn't even look at her. "You don't argue with denial on stilts." Ethan's voice wobbled before it rose. "This is a setup." His hands shook as he gestured toward me. He's been trying to control everything since day one. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Men who panic always shout. Men who know stand still. Lily swallowed, standing beside me now. Is the $28,000 debt true? Ethan blinked. What? No excuses, she whispered. Yes or no? He hesitated, and that was all the answer anyone needed. Before the silence could strangle him further, Miguel stepped forward, quiet as a lighthouse on a storm night, holding a single page. Vegas marker, he said, firm but calm. Validated. And a Nevada notary affidavit. Gasps again. Her groomsman muttered, "Dude," and looked at his shoes, suddenly very fascinated by the deckwood. Deirdre pressed her fingers to her temple like she was auditioning for a perfume commercial and failing. "This is cruel," she snapped. "We are a respected family. You ambushed us." I finally turned toward her. "Careful," I said softly. "Cruelty is taking money from a man you call a beggar." A ripple of murmurs rolled across the tables. The truth was walking now, shoes off, quiet and comfortable. I placed a plain white envelope on the table, its weight nothing compared to what it contained. "Vendor withdrawal letters," I explained. "Effective tomorrow at 10 a.m, unless the prenup is signed and full debt disclosures are provided." Soft whispers spread like slow fire. Heads turned. Someone coughed. Someone else whispered, "Holy hell." Ethan reached for the mic again. He was sweating now, the sunflower pocket square starting to look like a joke, told too many times. This is class warfare," he barked. "He's punishing me because I came from nothing and—" A vendor snorted, loud, honest, beautiful. Nora crossed her arms, leaning slightly forward. Subtle, but enough that several guests seemed to instinctively sit straighter. I spoke quietly, because quiet has gravity. "You tried to leverage Lily, you tried to leverage the vendors, and you tried to leverage me. But leverage only works when the foundation holds." My voice never rose. His couldn't stop shaking. Turning to Lily, I said, "We can reschedule. We can do this right. We don't have to let urgency be our enemy." Her throat bobbed. She took a napkin and wiped her face, not daintily but deliberately. Then she nodded once, a clean, declarative movement. We paused the wedding. You could feel the entire deck exhale and then freeze. Ethan blinked fast. "Baby, Lily, you're letting him brainwash you. This is about love. We have a vision." Nora stood, smooth as a blade, sliding from a sheath. "Son," she said, "love doesn't fear paperwork." And there it was. Something in Lily's face shifted, something soft, turning steel. She stepped back from Ethan just an inch, but it felt like a mile. He grabbed his champagne flute, slammed it down so hard the bubbles fizzed over. "I'm not signing anything under threat." "You already signed acknowledgement of receipt," I reminded calmly. "The rest is choice." Silence again, heavy, pregnant with consequences. Lily's voice came small and steady. "I need someone who stands with me, not on me." Ethan sputtered. "You're all insane. This is sabotage." "He's jealous." "Jealous?" I repeated. "Son, the only thing I envy in you is how easily you believe your own lies." A few guests choked out laughs. They quickly tried to hide behind napkins. He stormed away from the microphone, pacing. "I'll sign it later. We'll handle this privately." "No," I said gently. "We handle honesty in daylight." Deirdre pointed at me, trembling. "You've ruined everything." "I protected someone," I corrected. "There's a difference. I thanked everyone for coming." "Please enjoy dessert," I said simply, voice steady. "The quartet is paid for. Let them finish the evening with grace." People didn't clap. They didn't need to. Truth had already given its applause. I walked off the deck toward the parking lot. The air was thick with the scent of marsh and salt and relief. Lily followed slowly. We reached the rolls, chrome catching the last of sunset. Fireworks cracked above us in the distance, but every burst felt like punctuation, not celebration. She leaned her head on my shoulder. "Mom would have liked the music," she whispered. "She'd have liked your spine more," I murmured back. We stood there, two silhouettes beside a car that symbolized everything quiet men hold steady in storms. Behind us, Ethan's voice rose in panicked staccato, calling friends, arguing with his mother, trying to rebuild a collapsing empire, one desperate syllable at a time. He would not sign that night. He would blame optics. He would sleep in a hotel. But none of that mattered. Because tonight, a girl realized her father wasn't embarrassing her. He was saving her, and tomorrow, the paperwork would finish the job. Justice is paperwork that arrives on time. July 5th, 8:15 a.m. The morning after the rehearsal dinner disaster. Charleston smelled like rain and redemption. The world was quiet in that way. It only is after a storm. Trees still, birds cautious, sky washed clean as if someone upstairs had wiped it with a cloth. I pulled up to Klein and Fairchild in the rolls, Binder on the seat beside me like a co-pilot. Klein greeted me in his navy summer suit, linen, no sweat. A man built for quiet battles. We file first, he said. Then we deal with theatrics, I nodded. He slid across a stamped motion. Emergency petition to pause trust, disbursement pending full marital transparency, plus executed prenup, just ink and a seal, and the weight of a fallen future son-in-law. We CC'd Ethan and Deirdre. The echo of consequence began its long walk. At 10:02 a.m., I emailed every vendor, thank you for your time. We are pausing the event. All deposits remain valid. You will be paid for today. New date to follow. That message cost me $3,500 in cancellation fees. Some men call that a loss. Fathers call it tuition. Lily's peace of mind was worth more than any banquet hall clock ticking down a wedding schedule. Harold called next. Voice calm, almost soothing. I invoked the material interference clause, he said, based on attempted kickbacks and vendor pressure. Venue remains yours when you choose. Lily only. Thank you, Harold. Weddings show character, he said. But cancelling them shows truth. Amen. At 11:30, Miguel's final message arrived. Eviction record. Atlanta 2019 eviction record. Nashville 2021. Small claims judgment of $5,160 from a former fiancé's brother. Pattern of financial instability and misrepresentation. I forwarded it to Klein, who added it to the gift contingency file like placing bricks in a foundation. Justice doesn't need speed. It needs structure. Noon. My front door camera pinged. Ethan and Deirdre stood there, posed like denial in human form. I opened the door but didn't invite them in. Boundaries aren't walls. They're doors with locks. Mark, Ethan began, as if we were teammates reviewing a bad play. Let's be adults. We can work this out, Deirdre chimed in, sugary as spoiled peaches. We don't need lawyers and humiliation. We just need respect. I motioned toward the dining room table, where the prenup waited beside the binder like a quiet judge. The rolls title sat on top. Elegant as judgment, Ethan cleared his throat. I'll sign, he said, if we remove Section 7 and you front $50,000 to help me get started. My laugh surprised even me. Not cruel, disbelieving. A man still negotiating after being caught robbing the till. I poured sweet tea into 3 glasses. Southern hospitality isn't suspended for arrogance. I slid the doorbell transcript across the table. His own words printed clean. Beggars have no place at a wedding. That's what I sign when I sign anything, I said. Paper remembers. Lily appeared from the hall, eyes clear, spine steel. Ethan, she said, voice quiet but sharp, this is over unless you sign the original prenup and enroll in a debt management program. There it was. Love transformed into self-respect. He stared at her like the ground had betrayed him by holding her up. You're ungrateful, he snapped. She stood straighter. No, I'm done. He didn't sign. He didn't apologize. He just left, dragging his mother's fury behind him like a broken parade float. By 2:45 p.m., Klein emailed, vendor withdrawals confirmed. Trust formally paused. By 5 I returned the dress. The boutique manager whispered, I'm so sorry. I smiled. Don't be. We're early, not late. The restocking fee was $300. I paid it without blinking. The quartet texted Lily, play us again. When it's love. That evening we ate seafood stew on the porch. Cicadas humming approval from the trees. No fireworks, no panic, no performance. We hadn't lost a wedding. We had reclaimed a future. You don't win a war by burning the house you live in. You win by keeping the roof intact while the wrong people walk out the door. The wedding day arrived anyway, July 5th evening, warm and soft as a sigh. But instead of aisle runners and champagne flutes, my house held something better: peace. We grilled hot dogs on the back porch. Nora mixed sweet tea with lemon and a splash of peach nectar the way Elena used to. Lily wore denim shorts and a white cotton blouse. No veil, no mascara streaks, just a clean face and tired hope beginning to stretch its wings. Inside, bare feet padded across cool pine floors. The curtains were open, letting marsh light spill across the living room like a blessing. Someone set down a tray of deviled eggs. Nora hummed Shenandoah while rinsing berries in the sink. The world was ordinary again, and ordinary felt divine. At 7:10 p.m., fireworks popped somewhere across the river, faint and polite. Lily curled beside me on the porch swing, knees tucked under her, like she was 8 again, coming for reassurance after a storm. Was I blind? She asked, staring at the pecan tree where we once hung a tire swing. Love isn't blindness, I said. It's light. Sometimes light washes out shadows until they get too big to ignore. She rested her head on my shoulder. I reached into the little wooden box on the porch table, the one Elena hand-painted blue with white magnolias, and pulled out a recipe card. Lemon bars, spotted with grease at the upper right corner. My wife's handwriting curved like the waves she loved at Sullivan's Island. Elena never measured respect. She noticed it. She noticed little things: who opens a door, who asks how your heart is, who dries dishes without being asked. I showed Lily the card, and she traced the smudged corner with her thumb. I thought I was choosing freedom, she whispered. Maybe I was choosing a cage. No, I said. You were choosing a chance. And today you chose yourself. That's not a failure. That's a graduation. She wiped her cheek with the back of her hand, not crying, just clearing space for new breath. The rolls sat under the oak tree, draped beneath its cover once again, silver peeking through like moonlight, refusing to be ignored. I walked over, placed my palm gently on the hood through the fabric, and whispered to Eleanor, "We'll use it soon." When joy feels sturdy, I wasn't protecting a car. I was protecting a legacy, a marriage's memory, a family's integrity. Wealth isn't money. Wealth is what you refuse to trade for approval. My phone buzzed twice, texts from guests at last night's reveal. You did the right thing. That man isn't husband material. He's a headline waiting to happen. Tell Lily she dodged a lifetime of explanations. I didn't answer any of them. Victory doesn't always need witnesses. Sometimes it just needs quiet. Before bed, I transferred $1,000 to the bridal vendor Ethan tried to bully. Attached note: for the hour arrogance stole from you. They replied with a single heart emoji and integrity never goes out of style. The next morning, early sun bleeding pink across the marsh, Lily came downstairs in sneakers and asked, "Can we go to the tidal flats?" We drove, windows cracked, air still cool. Watched the egrets lift off like slow white prayers. Salt in the breeze. Sand under our shoes. The tide didn't judge. It just arrived, faithful as forgiveness. Sometimes winning looks like a ceremony, and sometimes winning looks like calm. That day, calm was enough. The loudest apologies are usually invoices. A week passed. July 12th. The heat lay over Charleston like a heavy quilt, the cicadas preaching their endless sermon in the trees. I sat on the porch swing with iced tea when my phone buzzed. Deirdre, 3 paragraphs, perfectly punctuated. The digital equivalent of pearls polished before battle. Misunderstandings. Emotions ran high. Family reputation, and attached at the bottom, because there's always a bottom, a settlement proposal. If I would publicly clarify the situation and reinstate the funding, Ethan would agree to hold off on making comments online about my financial control issues. Imagine that. Blackmail dressed as reconciliation. I typed back 2 sentences, no further contact. Direct all communication to counsel, no smiley, no threat. Just a door closing with dignity. I forwarded the message to Klein. Within an hour, He sent a non-disparagement letter and an offer to mediate if Ethan returned the $2,400 kickback money. Silence followed. The kind that isn't peace, it's retreat, Miguel texted 3 days later. Blue Spire quietly dissolved on July 20th. One more failed LLC in a digital graveyard of ego. I imagined Ethan clicking close account on his dream of becoming a mogul off other people's pockets. Lily made herself a new bank account that week. Just her name on it. No joint login, no whispered promises. She signed up for a community coding course, laughing as she showed me the student portal. If he liked me for my potential, she said, I'll build it myself. Sometimes heartbreak doesn't break you. Sometimes it builds new scaffolding where flimsy fantasies used to stand. On August 2nd, I sold my boat trailer, won $900, cash. Not because I needed the money, because I needed the symbolism. Tools, not trophies. Movement, not display. We donated the $300 dress restocking fee in Elena's name to a charity that helps brides who have to walk away from the wrong aisle. The receipt sits pinned to the fridge, not a loss but a testament. The rolls stayed under its cover through August. Dust settled gently, like it was sleeping, not forgotten. And then September 14th, a Sunday morning full of gold-leaf sunlight and cinnamon-scented air from Nora's kitchen, Lily wandered into the garage and lifted the cover. Let's take her out, she said. She didn't ask permission. She announced possibility. We rolled down East Bay Street, windows open, radio off. Charleston looked different, not richer, not grander, just more honest. People stared, but not the way they stare at new money, sharp and hungry. They looked the way you watch something earned. The purr of that old engine sounded like a hymn, quiet pride, not performance. I parked near the Ravenel Bridge, water glittering like someone spilled silver across the horizon. One day, I told her, you'll ride away in this for reasons that add up. She nodded, tracing the polished wood panel with her fingertips, and for someone who sees me, not my reflection on their feed. We sat there in silence, the kind that heals better than any apology. There was no anger left, only space. Space for new decisions, space for a life not bargained away, space for a future not mortgaged to someone else's ego. Some weddings are a beginning, some cancellations are too. The world didn't end. It reset. And that was enough. The man who called me a beggar started a GoFundMe. Late September, the marsh grass turning gold, Nora chopping apples for cobbler in the kitchen, my phone buzzed. A link sent by 3 different people in under 20 minutes. Vale Vision Fund, $60,000 goal. Love, entrepreneurship and resilience. Front and center, Ethan, fresh haircut, forced smile, rental Bentley behind him like a child wearing his father's shoes. Video caption, rebuilding after a setback. Join me. No mention of Lily, no mention of accountability, just carefully framed pity with a lighting setup he probably borrowed. I didn't laugh. I've lived long enough to know that men like him don't fall. They beg for a cushion. I forwarded the link to Klein, who forwarded it to a consumer protection attorney Lily found on Reddit. 3 days later, the page disappeared. Reason listed, verification issues. The world has a sense of humor when you let it work on its own schedule. A week later, Lily and I went to Bertha's kitchen. Collard greens, okra soup, cornbread, soul food that sticks to your ribs the way gratitude sticks to memory. We ate quietly for a while, steam rising between us. Do you think he ever loved me? She finally asked. I took my time. An honest question deserves clean language. Maybe, I said. But I think he loved how you made him feel rich more than he loved who you are. She didn't cry. That part of the journey was over. She just nodded, the way someone nods when they finally stop blaming themselves for someone else's hunger. On the drive home, we passed a couple on the pier, bride and groom still, in their wedding clothes, shoes off, laughing barefoot as the tide licked their ankles. Lily watched them, then exhaled a soft, hopeful sound. "I'm not done with the idea of marriage," she said. "I'm done with the idea of rescue." That's when I knew the wound had closed, not by sealing shut, but by staying open enough to grow around the lesson. At home, I went to the garage and pulled the cover off the 1965 Rolls-Royce Silver Cloud 3. The chrome caught the porch light like a wink of approval. I taped a note to the windshield. Nothing dramatic, just a truth that settled into me somewhere between disappointment and dignity, not a trophy. A test. If they hate your roots, they don't deserve your road. The doorbell chimed once. A small box sat on the porch, soft brown paper, tied with a ribbon. Inside, sheet music, a handwritten score of "Summertime," signed by the same quartet that played on July 4th. Dated July 4th, 2025, below the date, "To Lily, for choosing love over illusion." I framed it above the mantel, not as a reminder of what we escaped, but as a tribute to the strength it took to walk away. In the end, revenge wasn't noise or spectacle. It was paperwork, patience, and a spine perfectly aligned with the truth. Justice wasn't loud. It was Lily's quiet voice saying, "No more. And as for Ethan, you didn't lose us. You gave us away, and we are better for it."